iPads, iPhones, and smartphones are great until you drop them. If you need repairs, where do you go? Yakety Yak Wireless. Yakety Yak is a full-service wireless repair and sales center located just off Highway 121 in Colleyville. Our experienced technicians can fix almost any problem with your device: cracked screens, battery issues, water damage, and more. Have an old cell phone you don't need? Want to buy a used phone? Yakety Yak has over 500 used phones in stock and pays top dollar for your phone. Visit Yakety Yak Wireless today.
Okay, today we're going to be taking apart an iPhone 5S that has a broken screen. This is the first one we've had in the shop. It is different than the iPhone 5. The first thing we have to do is test to make sure that this iPhone 5S works correctly, and check the fingerprint sensor as well to make sure that it works. Then we power it off. Like I said, this is different than the iPhone 5. One of the big differences is going to be how the home button connects, and you have to be very careful when you open it that you don't tear the home button cable. We'll start with a pentalobe screwdriver, where we're going to remove the two bottom screws after the phone powers down. And then a lot of people will try and use a suction cup to lift the screen on the 5 and the 5S. What we found is that when the screen's really broken, it's difficult, if not impossible, to do that. So what we'll use is a razor blade. We'll be very careful with it, but if you go in above the headphone jack and you only go in about a 1/16 of an inch, there's a little gap there in the screen, and you can actually use it to lift up the bottom part. So you're seeing we're going to do that right now. If you go in too far with that razor blade, or if you slip, you will cut the cable to the headphone jack. Don't do that. So we're going to show you right here. You can see the headphone jack just right above it. There's a little gap in the framing of the screen, and if you're careful, you won't ding up or mar the edges of the frame, the mid-frame either. So you can see we got up underneath it, and once it lifts enough that you can get a plastic spudger under there, then you can release the rest of the screen. The 5S's do have a tendency to stick on the sides here, and the frame gets hung up on the screen, so be really careful that you don't break the LCD when you remove this. So once we get all this done, you're going to be able to see that the home button actually is connected by a flex cable down to the motherboard, which is very unlike the iPhone 5. So if you just lift this thing out, you're going to tear it. So what we do is we actually separate the screen a little bit and shift it just a tad to the left to expose where that cable connects. You can see us moving it over here. And there we go. So that's a trick that will allow you to get to this next point. There is a little metal cover over the home button, and you lift it from the front. And this is where the flex cable connects. It's just a little metal shield. You lift from the front and it lifts out. It does have a front and a back, so be aware. There's two clips on the back, one in the front. After you get that off, then you can remove the flex cable connector, and you're free to lift up on the digitizer LCD component. Next, we're going to remove the EMI shield covering it. Unlike the iPhone 5, there are 4 screws, not 3 on this one. And the top right screw, just like on the iPhone 5, is not magnetized, so you will need a pair of tweezers to remove it. So we'll go ahead and take this out. The EMI shield just lifts straight off. Another tip here is when you're rebuilding the iPhone, if you cant that screen back too far, when you're putting back on the EMI shield, you can actually pop the flex cables off, and if you do that, then you'll rebuild the whole thing and either the digitizer or the LCD won't work. So you got to be really careful. Don't go past 90 degrees on it. Okay, we got that last screw out. Now we remove the EMI shield. There are 3 connectors. Just like the iPhone 5, the connectors are in different places, which is why you can't use an iPhone 5 screen. So we're going to go ahead and remove these 3 connectors. That's the proximity sensor connector and camera. That is the LCD and digitizer connectors. And we're done with the iPhone base for right now, so now we're going to concentrate on the screen. Again, it is different than the iPhone 5. We will start up with the headphone jack, and the headphone jack on the iPhone 5S looks a little like the 5, but it actually has retaining clips on the left and on the right side that you have to be aware of. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go in and remove the 2 screws. These are the screws that hold down the earpiece speaker. And they are different sizes, so just like with the iPhone 5, you need to make sure you keep all your screws aligned properly. So once you get this screw, this second screw out, the first clip you're going to release is on the top right side of the shield. And you go in with a pair of tweezers just right at the top right. You can see that little metal clip right there. If you just pop it out, it releases it, and you can take the whole shield off, and then the speaker will just lift out. So there goes the shield. Here comes the speaker. Okay. Another big difference that you're going to see hang on a second, we're taking another photo. Okay. The home button is radically different. There are 3 screws that hold down the home button. The top screw that is exposed is the one that is connected to the mid plate as the backing frame there. So you gotta, and there's a little retaining clip on it. You gotta kind of hold it down. It doesn't come out into your hands. It just unscrews. Then you fold down the flex cable and you get the 2 screws for the home button. When I put this phone together, I made a mistake and I actually screwed that top screw in before I put on this retaining plate. You can still do it, it just makes it more difficult. So make sure you build it back in the order you see here, where you unscrew that 1 screw and then you put the retaining plate back in before you screw that screw back down. Okay, so we're getting off the metal plate. This should just lift right off once it's unscrewed. Okay, there it goes. Remember which direction that goes back on. Now, the home button's ready to come out. It is adhered down, and if you pull on it, you're going to tear the flex. So we actually use a variable rate heat gun. We heat it to about 140 degrees, and we only heat it for a couple of seconds, just enough to loosen the adhesive right there. If you hold it on there for a long time, you're going to start melting stuff. And then what we're going to use is either a pry stick or a spudger, and just very gently lift up on that cable. You're going to get underneath it and lift the whole thing up, and then you can use your finger to push the home button out. Again, be very careful because chances are you don't have a replacement home button. Okay, now we have to go to the top proc sensor, which again is different than on the iPhone 5. If you notice that black square in the upper left-hand corner, that's an antenna. And so what we have to do is we have to remove this mid plate and the proc sensor as one assembly. So there should be 5 screws here, 2 on each side, 1 at the top. The one on the bottom was with the home button, so you've already gotten rid of that. We're going to go ahead and remove these. Okay. Now we're going to, now we have the top assembly here. You can see that black patch, and up there on the right, those are the gold contacts for the headphone speaker. That is adhered down. So something else will have to loosen up. First thing you're going to do is you're going to lift this plate. This is the backing plate. And just be gentle with it because it's still attached. You can pull the camera out now. So you can see I'm grabbing the top cable, I'm pulling the camera, and I'm just going to flip it over. Kind of get it out of the way. Just being gentle with it. Now, on this flex cable, again, different than the 5, hit it with just for a second with some heat. And now what you're going to do is you're going to pry up that flex cable very gently. Don't tear it. And the flex cable itself has several parts. There's the front camera, there's the proximity sensor, there's a secondary light sensor that's new to the iPhone 5S, and I'm not sure what it's for, but it folds underneath. Okay, we're pulling it up now. Okay. Hang on, taking another shot here for just a second. Once you get that adhesive separated, this whole piece just lifts off. there's a couple things to be aware of and to look for on your new screen. There's a plastic retaining ring for the camera. If your new screen doesn't have it, you're going to have to heat the one up on this one and carefully remove it and reuse it, otherwise your camera won't center. The other thing that you need to look for on it is there's a little square bracket to the right of the camera retaining ring, and that square bracket is going to, right there, that holds your proximity sensor, and if those aren't on the screen, you're going to have to pull them off your old one and reuse it. So on the new screen, remove the backing. Okay. We're almost ready to rebuild this thing, so we're going to grab this area. Now, there's another piece on here. Let's find it. So that's the microphone. The front-facing microphone goes in the hole right there. Then you've got your front camera, you've got your proximity sensor, and you've got that extra sensor. And the extra sensor has, okay, let's see here. We're going to start building this. I always put the microphone in first because it helps kind of seat everything in the proper direction. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to push down the camera and seat the camera, and then I'm going to put the backing plate on there to kind of, just a couple of screws just to kind of hold everything together. So you can see here where everything's kind of trying to line up. So right now I'm trying to seat that little extra sensor that goes just to the right of the front camera. It has a rubber bushing on it, and if it comes off on your prox sensor, great. If it doesn't, look for it next to the camera ring, and it's pretty obvious which way it goes in. But again, it helps center everything. Make sure everything clicks down properly in there. That prox sensor fits right into that little square and needs to drop down and sit flush. If it doesn't sit flush, your speaker won't sit flush and you won't have any speaker. And you could also break the phone putting it back together. Now you've got your 5 screws that can go back in. There's the top one. Okay. Don't over tighten the screws. Snug them down, but don't get them over tight. We're putting in the side screws. Okay. Last one here. Okay, so now we've got the screws in. Now what we're checking is to make sure that front camera's centered. If it's off center, you can actually slide it around a little bit with your finger to align it. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you want to make sure it's not so off centered you can't see the camera. Okay, so then you check the earpiece speaker to see if it sits down flat. If it doesn't sit down flat, that prox sensor's not in right. You got to adjust it. Once you get that in, then you can see on here where there's 2 clips. You're going to do the right clip first and then the left clip. And so I'll show you how we do it. We're going to get this thing aligned, and everything's magnetized because of the earpiece speaker, so you got to kind of play with it a little bit. Going to get this aligned. Once everything sits kind of flush, before you click anything in, you're going to put in the bottom screw first. That'll hold everything in place. Don't over tighten it though. Okay, once that's in, then you can look and see if the right side's clipped down, and you can see the left side right there. You can use your tweezers to push it into its little gap that it goes into and click it down. Just be gentle with it. Don't push too hard. Once it gets down, everything should sit nice and flush. Your camera should still be centered. Then you can put your top screw in. Okay, top screw is now in. Now we can go to work on the home button. So the home button goes in just like this with the cable on the right side. Now, it's going to want to stick and get in the wrong spot. So you'll see I'm going to use a pair of tweezers, I believe, here to get it to kind of sit down properly. Yeah, there we go. So you kind of use the tweezers to help you align it. It's best to go in from the top and then lay it down. Make sure that it's centered. There's actually a little pin that the flex cable fits down over to help you align everything just right. Now, what you're going to see me do is put this top screw in on the right first, which is the wrong way to do it. So don't do what I'm doing. So here I go. I'm folding this over. What I haven't done is put in the plate first. Put in the plate and the two screws, then do this screw. And this screw does have a little retaining clip that needs to be pointing upwards. You got to use your thumb. I'm using my right thumb here to hold it while I screw this thing down. If you end up doing it this way and mess up like I did, you can still put the plate on. You just got to be careful with that flex cable. It does have some give to it, but you don't want to tear. You don't want to tear it. Okay, now I'm going to go and put this on. So see, the reason why is because that right screw sits underneath the flex cable. That's how I did it backwards in this one. Okay, here we go. Get that screw aligned. There's the first one. And so now you can see I'm folding back that flex cable to put the second one in, which is a little dicey. I didn't tear it or anything, so it was okay. But it's better to do it the other way. You can see here how I'm trying to finagle it in there. Okay, you have now built up your screen. You're ready to attach it back down to the motherboard. Use patience when attaching it to the motherboard because the connectors sit kind of flush, and so it's a little difficult. That first connector there that I'm attaching should line up exactly with the left side of the motherboard. So it doesn't stick over at all. It's directly flush. Just take your time. Don't get frustrated because you don't want to bend any pins. Make sure all three, they will make an audible click when they go down correctly. Okay, now remember what I said about don't bend that home screen or the digitizer much past 90 degrees. Otherwise, those cables will come disconnected underneath that shield. So you can see here I'm working at getting the shield aligned. Make sure you get it aligned just where you need it. And then you have your 4 screws. 3 of them are magnetized, 1 is not. I do get questions about Yakety Yak Wireless and whether we just accept walk-in customers or do mail-in. We do have a website, yaketupdfw.com, and we pay shipping back to you, so you can send us your iPhones for repair. We'll repair them, put a 90-day warranty on them, and mail them back to you. And we don't just fix iPhones. We also fix Galaxies and HTC phones. And you can call us at 817-399-1000 with any questions about this video or any questions about our products or services. Okay, remember this last one we have to stick in with a pair of tweezers. There we go. I'm going to tighten that one down. Once we do that, all we have left is connecting up this home button and putting it back together. So the home button's a little touchy to reconnect. We do it in the reverse of what we did. I'm going to slide it across here. Okay, get that cable to stick out. And then, yeah, you can see here, I'm going to zoom up on it. You can see that cable and you can see the connector right above it. And you can try it with your fingers. You can use it with a pair of tweezers. What it's clicking down onto has some give, so it's kind of mushy. So it's not like clicking it onto the motherboard. You'll feel it. It'll still make a little bit of a click when it connects down. Here I'm just checking it with the tweezers to make sure I got it in there good. Do a little lift to see whether it comes up. Looks like it's okay. Now we're going to put that retaining clip on. Remember, the 2 pins go towards the back, the 1 goes towards the front, and it goes on the inside of the metal clip on the back, not on the outside. So you can see me aligning it there, setting it up, and clicking it down. And it's that simple. There it goes. So that's in. Now what we're going to do is realign the screen. You set the screen in from the top. Hang on here, hopefully I zoom out. Here we go. Looking for the zoom button on the camera. And okay, here we go. So you line it up from the top, make sure it sits in there nice and snug, and then push down on the sides here. And when you get it about 3/4 of the way down, see how I push with my thumb? When you push with your thumb, that'll allow it to seat the rest of the way. Just make sure you're not holding the power button when you do that. It's important that you leave the power off. One other thing to note, if your screen came with a screen protector, peel it off, or screen cover, peel it off before you do any of this work, because it will build up a static charge, and then you turn the phone on, test it, then you peel off the screen protector and blow the screen. So you can see I've already taken mine off. It's a particular problem with the iPhone 5s. We've killed 2 or 3 screens doing it, so we have now learned. Make sure you take that screen protector off first. Okay, we're going to power it up. And once it's powered up, we're going to go and check to make sure everything works on it, that the home button still responds the way it should be. But it's not a terribly difficult repair. That home button will catch people if you've repaired iPhone 5s before. If someone is trying to sell you just the digitizer and not the entire assembly like you saw us fix, don't buy it. It doesn't work right. I've seen people try and do it with super glue. It's a terrible mess. The way we fix it, Apple can't tell we've been inside that device. That's our goal. So everything worked. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember, yaketupdfw.com.